The internet really loves cringe, and has for a long time. By now, everyone's got that one cringy trend that they will never forget, either for trauma-related reasons, or if you're sick, because you like to reference it to your friends. Maybe it's Freddy Fazbear hitting on you, some anime kid bouncing around, or a girl who's already Tracer. Yeah, that one's mine. And the thing that all three of those trends have in common is that the sound associated with them was made by the famous internet band, the Living Tombstone. Personally, I hate internet cringe. I hate normal cringe. And the only thing that I hate more than internet cringe videos is internet cringe music. So for years now, if someone asks me what my least favorite artist of all time is, I will always go on record saying that it's the Living Tombstone. So you may be wondering, then, how do I end up in the scenario where I am listening to every The Living Tombstone song ever made? Well, that is a great question, actually. Since 2013, The Living Tombstone has been making high-effort music videos about gaming, memes, and other nerdy topics. And these videos get passed around like mono in a middle school, with view counts that rival pop musicians. So even though I hate them, this band is a pretty interesting case study on how something almost unanimously agreed to be cringe can become successful on its own. So that's why I'm doing this. Not only to face my fears, but to figure out what makes this iconic band just so cringy. Those of you who have been around on this channel for a bit may remember that I did something kind of similar recently with a certain children's band that will go unnamed. During that process, I learned firsthand why trying to live stream yourself listening to an entire discography can be kind of dicey. But I do not learn from my mistakes, and I do not perceive consequences, so I did it again. Before actually starting this process, I had no expectations, which I know that does make sense. This band is famous for making songs about anything and everything, but no, when I say that, I mean I really did not prepare. I never even looked at how much music I would be listening to in total. And part of what comes with streaming this is that I said that out loud within minutes of going live. I do not know how long the discography is. I do not know what songs I've already heard and which I haven't, because I'm assuming I've heard a bunch of them on social media in places. I have no clue. I really have no clue. Almost immediately, I was just overwhelmed, overstimulated even, with thoughts and feelings about what I was experiencing. That logo screams 2011 about as loud as it can, and I kinda like it. Apparently, he also had the street cred to do a collab on his first song, and it's also a remix of an existing song, I guess. But the most interesting thing that I noticed immediately was what I was hearing, some pretty bland and uninteresting EDM. That sounds brutal, I know, but actually, I was pretty happy to be hearing it. YouTube intro core is what I would call this genre of music. The type of song used in gaming videos, YouTube tutorials, or, most recognizably, your cool, flashy YouTuber intro screen. If you don't immediately know what I'm talking about, it's kind of hard to describe it. I would just say non-copyright dubstep that has a very consistently medium tempo that sounds bouncy and positive. And funny, usually funny, unintentionally funny. The genre was in its absolute peak in 2014 and 2015. That's when The Fat Rat, OMFG, Alan Walker, and Tobu were in their primes. But The Living Tombstone was ahead of the trend in 2011, so he was probably inspired by dubstep artists like Skrillex, Afrojack, Datsik, and Knife Party. But this subgenre, and dubstep in general, isn't nearly as common these days, and people moved on from having an actual YouTube intro screen years ago. But the good news about this, and the reason that I was initially relieved at what I was hearing, is because without additional context, this genre isn't cringy. Let me give you an example. Xenogenesis by The Fat Rat isn't funny in a vacuum. Maybe a little silly, yeah, but the reason that the trend started where guys would leave their friends' houses with the song playing as their outro song was because we all remember how the song was used. In a Minecraft Let's Play or a FIFA pack opening that's maybe trying just a little bit too hard with very outdated humor. Luckily for me, I am hearing these songs in a vacuum, preventing them from having any context, therefore preventing them from being cringy. So, ironically, I was more optimistic in this moment than I was for the rest of the entire listening experience. My thought process was that I could easily stomach 10 hours of some classic internet dubstep. But it was directly after the first two songs that things took one of many left turns. I want to preface this by saying that I did have a vague idea that I was going to run into this, but I had no idea that it was going to look anything like it ended up looking. The songs, they started to become more and more involved with the famous franchise My Little Pony. More specifically, the related animated series My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. Yeah, not necessarily the subject matter that I would have chosen to hear about for hours and hours on end. A large majority of the songs on the Living Tombstone channel in this era were either remixes of songs featured on the show, songs that had lines grabbed from the show, or just songs that had lyrics about the show. The third song I heard was called Party with Pinky, and while I couldn't really make out what the lyrics were saying, I knew they had something to do with the children's show that the thumbnail suggested. Listen, I'm not here to judge you if you're a brony or if you like this music because of its subject matter, but I am here to analyze what makes this stuff so unbearable to listen to and to watch. So here's my take. It's a kids show. Like, for kids. I'm not a child. It kind of makes me uncomfortable. And it's not like we're being subtle about it. Here, I'll prove it.
And ponies like this who will share every kiss like they'll share the rest of their lives.
After realizing that I would be listening to mostly My Little Pony songs for the next few hours, I kind of started to mentally check out. But I will say this, not all the songs were about ponies. For instance, that song, the name, it makes me feel, I don't want to say it out loud, it makes me feel weird. It was the sixth song that I heard. And while listening to this, I realized something. When we're not talking about My Little Pony, I'm feeling the same kind of cringe that I feel when I see an early Smosh video, an early Ryan Higa video, or seeing any other early YouTube type Nyan Cat, Bad Luck Brian humor, which is a cringe that I'm used to feeling. And it's not as bad as whatever this My Little Pony core nightmare disaster is. Day one was simultaneously really bad, but also the least cringy day of the whole thing. On one hand, there was the brony music, which was borderline unlistenable. We already covered that. And on the other hand, there were songs in a, dare I say, nostalgic genre that had lyrics about an old meme or no lyrics at all. But we're not even at the Living Tombstone's viral stuff yet. To draw any actual conclusions, we'll have to go deeper. But moving on to the next day is not going to be quite so simple. See, I made a call about 2 minutes into the live stream. Also, in terms of copyright, my prediction is this. My prediction is that the Living Tombstone is going to let me get through the first like 30 songs, and then right around here, when we get to this single, Discord that we're looking at, when things start to go on streaming platforms, I feel like that's when the copyright's gonna start to get really annoying. About an hour and 40 minutes into the stream, I started to get notifications that there was detected copyright material and my stream would soon be suspended, which would obviously ruin my plans. But to give the Living Tombstone or his label some credit here, they did let me go for another 2.5 hours before shutting me down, which was a lot more than Kidz Bop. But maybe that just goes to show how shitty Kidz Bop is. I really don't know, honestly. In any case, that kind of spelled the end for the streaming arc. Real quick, let me just clarify something. I mentioned that I never checked the total runtime of this marathon before I started it, which was a silly decision, but it wasn't until the beginning of day 2 that I actually bothered to do the math and I discovered that it would be 11 hours in total. On day 1, I cleared nearly 40% of that time, about 4 hours, but it felt like an eternity. And not just in the way that I was watching the clock because I was bored. I don't know if it was because none of the music is split into albums or because it's all very repetitive, but it just felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. And that phenomenon didn't ease up as days passed. If anything, it got worse. So let me take you through what happened on day 2, where the real misery started. The first 2/3 of day 2 were spent listening to My Little Pony remixes of internet memes, and a few original songs. Very similar to day 1. This is by far, like, the most famous one. This is history right here. Oh. I'll see you in 20 minutes. Dude, what the fuck? What is happening? Songs about My Little Pony or anything nerdy are just going to be harder to write, and I do sympathize with that challenge. You're limited in the things that you can talk about, obviously. And here's the thing, to a certain extent, I have to respect it because the lack of giving a shit on display here is truly admirable. Being an adult male making songs about ponies just for the love of the craft. I mean, I can't imagine that Yoav Landau, the man behind the Living Tombstone, had an easy time explaining this hobby to friends and family at the time, and it's probably a tough sell on a first date, too. What do you do for fun, man? Oh, yeah, I make songs about animated magical ponies and internet memes. Yeah, the only thing keeping this stuff from being too cringe to even watch is the sense of passion. It would be a damn shame if he started only making songs about things that get views. This is not foreshadowing, and you have no evidence to support that claim. But during day 2, after 70 songs, I officially made it through the My Little Pony tunnel. Rarity Tears was the last song I heard about ponies, minus a user-submitted remix competition that the Living Tombstone held afterwards, but that doesn't really matter. At the 1 hour mark, I heard the first video game-related song, Collecting Cookies, featuring Mike the Microphone, who is a common singer on the Living Tombstone channel. It's a song about the infamous web game Cookie Clicker. And in that moment, I realized that this would be a turning point in the discography. And I sank a little lower in my chair because this was the worst song I had heard thus far. Sound-wise, we are very much in the same genre that we were before. It kind of just became easy to tune out. The main issue with this track is the lyrics, to be clear. The narrative isn't too fleshed out, it leaves a lot to interpretation, but from what I can gather, the song is about someone playing Cookie Clicker religiously and leaving behind all responsibilities to do so. That's a pretty funny premise, right? But it doesn't land, like, at all. In fact, it ends up being pretty cringy. And I've done a lot of thinking about why that is. That premise, while entertaining, isn't a new thing. The entire joke around Cookie Clicker was how addicting it was. And that doesn't mean that you can't write a song from that cliche angle, but the way they did it just comes across extremely pandering. In terms of lyrics, there's absolutely no amount of subtlety. Some of the lines are uncomfortably melodramatic, and other than the direct references to the game, the song's barely even related at all. It really feels like they had the idea to make a Cookie Clicker song and didn't really think much past that, and it shows. Being pandered to this hard is kinda cringy. This song did really well though, so that's all it took. This would become a new type of song for the Living Tombstone to make. But I don't think Yoav realized that he was sitting on a gold mine quite yet. Some crazy anomaly would have to happen for the entire channel to start resembling this cringy, pandering hell. So the FNAF song is up next. You know, I could spend the next 10 minutes making a second-by-second breakdown of the FNAF song, which would probably be pretty good for retention, but I am not going to do that. Why? Well, because I actually kind of enjoyed hearing it after all the other stuff that I was forced to hear. Yes, the lyrics do succumb to some of the same pitfalls as the Cookie Clicker song, which I hated so much. They're very on the nose and pandering, but they did their due diligence with this song. They could have gone full-blown corny. Like, for example, making a song from the perspective of someone playing the game and their reactions to it, but they didn't do that. They instead wrote the lyrics about the one thing that the Five Nights at Freddy's fandom loves hearing about more than anything else: the lore, or the Living Tombstone's vague idea of what the lore might be. So even though it is pandering as hell, it's successful in being that. People who like FNAF generally like this song, and obviously this song did obscenely well. Yoav went 2 for 2 with the video game related songs. So unfortunately, this was that anomaly required to take the channel in a dark direction, to relentlessly chase after those sweet, shiny, cringe-fueled views. By the end of day 2, I had hit the era of the Living Tombstone that I was dreading since before I even started this. An ocean of overly quirky, non-self-aware songs that I've heard in various places on the internet over and over again. 2 different 3-minute remixes of the Dog of Wisdom meme. 2 different Splatoon songs. A Five Nights at Freddy's 2 song. A Five Nights at Freddy's 3 song. And a mashup of Smash Mouth's hit single All-Star and the Super Smash Bros. Theme. But even in the final few songs of day 2, that familiar, bizarre creativity still shined through. We're witnessing an evolution, not an instant transformation. I made sure to quit before things got too out of control, leaving the next chapter of the Living Tombstone for day 3 Liam to experience. Day 3 is where things get dark. Figuratively and literally, I listened to music in the dark on day 3. On day 2, we saw some pretty massive changes in the format of the Living Tombstone channel. On day 3, those changes take full effect. First of all, the Living Tombstone himself kind of takes a back seat as a producer from this point on, and there's guest singers on all the remixes, which, for the most part, having trained singers on the songs is an improvement, but it does contribute to the feeling of humanity being sucked out of this channel. Everything just starts to look like a cringe music machine machine built to maximize views from a gaming audience. All the videos on the channel started to look the exact same. It was clear there was a greater focus on titles and thumbnails, and every video was watermarked the exact same too. Music was being released at breakneck speeds, and the vlogs, Q&As, and remix competitions that used to fill the gaps between songs on the channel disappeared entirely. Any trendy indie horror game would get a song in this era, and when it wasn't an indie horror game, it's a popular internet meme, a different trendy game, or a holiday song. But what matters more than the way that the songs get released is the content of the songs and the cringiness of them. By only 20 minutes into day 3, the channel had become so homogenized that it's hard to even pick out specific examples. However, I am staring one of the most famous Living Tombstone songs right in the face. No Mercy, the Overwatch song. When thinking of doing this video idea, this is the song that made me almost not do it. And I'm not exaggerating or kidding at all right now, I live in fear of this song. My friends play this song when they're around me just to fuck with me because they know how much I hate it. And no one even laughs anymore because everyone has to actually sit through the song for the bit. But my friends, despite being assholes, are important to this song and why it's so cringe. My friend group played the game Overwatch basically as a part-time job all throughout middle school and most of high school. Because of that, we're all very familiar with the culture around this game and the jokes that the community tends to make. The problem with that is that this song does a lot of the same things that Clicking Cookies did from day 2. The lyrics are incredibly pandering. Just like how getting addicted to Cookie Clicker is a pretty played out and cliche joke to make an entire song about, getting yelled at to play a certain hero in a hero shooter is the most surface level, non-nuanced, milquetoast premise they could have possibly picked for this game. My dad, and I seriously mean this right now. My dad, who has never played Overwatch in his life, knows what this cliche is. And again, it's perfectly okay to make a song about a cliche premise, but it's just made really awkward here because, well, A, the lyrics and singing are front and center, unlike Clicking Cookies, where the production was mainly the focus, and B, making the twist on that premise that the female character actually wants to play DPS and not support is so obvious and unfunny that it ironically makes me feel as if the Living Tombstone does treat girls weirdly in voice chat, the trope that this song is making fun of directly. The part where the male and female singers are trying to figure out what heroes they should play makes me physically uncomfortable. I think it might be a fair criticism to say that it's a song only made to cash in on a popular, growing franchise. So the song itself does make me feel awful, but there is something to add here. The obvious effect that social media has had on my opinion of this song. If this song wasn't such a big deal and so widely used on the internet in whatever Musical.lys and TikToks it was used in, I obviously wouldn't care as much. There's a certain bitterness that I just can't get rid of because I was forced to hear the song all the time on social media. So if we're strictly looking at this from a why does this make me cringe perspective, this is the biggest factor. And the same thing applies to many of the songs by the Living Tombstone that have been used on social media. My Ordinary Life, the FNAF 2 song, Spooky Scary Skeletons, etc. But at this point in the marathon, none of that mattered. I'll just be honest. I wasn't even thinking of cringe. I wasn't thinking much of anything, frankly. The state of the channel had become my singular concern. What happened to Yoav Landau? I found myself actually missing the unique and cringy style of music videos that I, at one point, hated so much. This is by far the most famous era of the Living Tombstone, but I would also say it's the worst era. The inherent consequence of all the songs looking and sounding the same is that no one song is notable. Write a song about something, pander to its audience as hard as possible, throw out an instrumental for the karaoke fans, and get out. That's the process. What that results in is each individual song being unlistenable for the people in the audience that it's targeting. But just because I don't personally identify with FNAF or Pokemon or Cuphead or Bendy and the Ink Machine, that doesn't mean that this stuff doesn't still read as extremely overly pandering and exhaustingly self-serious, because it does. Essentially what's happened here is that the Living Tombstone went from an almost charming remix channel to a gaming music slop channel within 4.5 hours of music that I heard across 2 days. By the time I finally heard something that wasn't about an indie game or dated meme, it had been 2 whole hours and I thought I had nothing left in me. It was the Living Tombstone's remix of Pikachu's Lament, a comedy song from 2019 about Pokemon made by the duo Bill and Sam. well, it sounds weird, but it looks even weirder. But getting through that fever dream almost gave me some confidence that I could push through and make it a few more hours. Between the Balatro that I was playing and the lack of sleep I was running on, I figured I could just fully check out. I mean, maybe if I could just go a little while longer. But 4 songs and 6 minutes after whatever the fuck that was, I changed my mind and I stopped recording. And that was because things got weird. So day 4 was the last day, but day 4 was also the worst day for so many reasons. On days 2 and 3, we witnessed the Living Tombstone slowly evolve into something a lot more corporate and soulless than what it started as. By contrast, day 4 was instantly a complete left turn. I'm not quite sure what happened at the Living Tombstone HQ, but the lyrics of day 4 and the end of day 3 were very sad. There's not really a more elegant way to describe it. All of the songs just happen to be about sad stuff, like feeling lazy, drinking too much alcohol, not feeling adequate in life, and a bunch of other depression-adjacent topics. Which, to be honest, after 8 hours of surface-level, corny lyrics about video games and poorly aged internet memes, would have been a welcome change. To finally see some nuance or human emotion in the lyrics that I'm being forced to hear. And furthermore, this was the Living Tombstone I had never heard before. I never even knew they made serious music. I've never seen anyone talk about it. But there is a reason that no one has brought up the new age of TLT songs. We may have changed subject matter again, but it's still the same people behind it. At a certain point, despite wanting to feel sympathy for these characters in these songs, I just feel nothing when fed the same lyrics packaged slightly differently over and over again. On paper, talking about personal struggles does have nuance, but somehow, even with the ball, wide open net, keeper is jerking off. They just can't execute on it. Instead, they wrote No Mercy, but with lyrics about depression 20 times. There was a point in time when this music would have been easier to stomach. When the channel was more human and you could tell there was passion behind the songs, it would have been easier to empathize. But this is coming after they've made me cringe at these corporate, disconnected songs about animatronics and Cuphead for hours. I asked this question a few minutes ago, mostly just trying to be funny, but now I have to ask it sincerely. What happened to Yoav Landau, the man who used to passionately make songs about ponies? We covered how the Living Tombstone channel was started in 2011, but that's not actually when Yoav first started YouTube. Cool Fox, with a K, was the name of his original channel, and if you look at it for even a second, you can see that this guy just wanted to be a YouTuber. There's Let's Plays, songs, and a few vlogs. And if you look at the last video on the channel, it's from 2011, and it's his announcement that he's moving to a new channel. For 5 straight years, Yoav ran the Living Tombstone channel all on his own, interacting with the community and making whatever popped into his head. But remember that Pikachu Fever Dream remix that I mentioned from day 3? Yeah, well, one of the guys in the group who made the original song, Sam Haft, eventually joined the Living Tombstone channel in 2016. Timing-wise, that aligns perfectly with this crazy change that we've seen on day 4. Now, I'm not trying to claim that Sam Haft ruined the Living Tombstone channel. I mean, it was never really a source of innovative and genius music anyway. But I think a lot of the charm that the Living Tombstone once had came from the nature of it being run by just one guy. I mean, when's the last time you've seen a new Living Tombstone song on your For You page? I can say it's been a pretty long time. I get reminded of their old stuff a lot, but not really their new stuff, and they're coming out with a new album as I'm making this. The last thing this band ever needed was to take themselves more seriously. But over the course of the last 6 hours of music and 3 days of listening, that's exactly what I watched them try to do. Everything became more serious, more uniform, and more pandering. And this felt like the culmination of everything I hate about this band. It's one thing to hear 10 hours of goofy, silly video game lyrics, but it felt so much more personal for them to try and emotionally manipulate me. I guess I just didn't expect to get dragged along like that right at the end. And to be perfectly clear, I empathize with whatever struggle the Living Tombstone has gone through or is going through. Making art is hard. It's a lot of tough decisions, dealing with insecurities, or finding motivation. If this is the only way they know how to express their emotions, I can't judge that. But the issue that comes with having an audience this large is you have to be conscious of the way that your art comes across. In my opinion, there are a lot of things that make the Living Tombstone cringy, but none of them are harmful. Where I think you do cross the line is using an emotional subject matter like depression to gain support from fans in place place of a more harmless or material one like video games. But I think, in some fateful way, this was exactly what I needed to hear. Because if you remember, the only reason I did this in the first place was to face my goofy ass fear. Figure out why I hate this band so much so that it can leave my subconscious forever. So did I even achieve that? Honestly, this entire marathon was a complete blur. So I have to look back on the footage to even remember the emotions I was feeling at the end. If you can look past the absolute brain rot that is this footage, you can see right at the end, I don't look scared. I don't even appear to be cringing. You can even see I tried to give this thing some sort of send-off by full screening the last song and sitting there like a moron trying to gather some words of wisdom. I guess nothing came to mind. I ended this process, not scared of what was gonna play next, but upset at what I was currently hearing. I felt betrayed, manipulated, and really bored. I didn't really learn much from doing this video, just to be frank. If anything, I learned that I need to think about my video ideas for more than 10 minutes while sleep deprived. So let's just agree to forget this ever happened. You got second monitor entertainment, and I got to yap for 20 minutes. Handshakes all around. At least I'm not scared of the cringiest band of all time anymore. Good night.